Thank you everyone for coming. This is Trailer Made, how to make successful and memorable trailers for games. My name is Derek Lieu, and also please turn off your cell phones and don't forget to fill out your evaluations after this. And I'm curious, who here is a game developer? And who here specifically wants to edit trailers for games? Oh, nice, cool. All right, so yeah, my name is Derek Lieu, and I've been an editor for 15 years. About a little bit over 5 has been specifically with games. I've worked with some agencies in like AAA games, but last few years it's all been indies, and these are some of the games that I've worked on. I work on both on kind of like very gamey games and also very story-driven games, which are lighter on game mechanics. So today we're going to talk first about kind of the unique strengths of trailers, some common pitfalls that I just see people doing all the time with their game trailers, talk a little bit about finding the hook for your game trailer, a little bit about teaching the audience about your game, a little bit about basic trailer structure, and then we'll have a whole bunch of tips and takeaways at the end. So first, let's talk about the goals of a game trailer. The goals are to teach, to excite, and to tease. That's pretty much it. You know, 1 or 2 out of 3 isn't bad, but if you can do all 3 of these things with your game trailers, then that's fantastic. First, just a bit of advice. Just generally, don't use a trailer to communicate ideas which are easily described with words, because a trailer lets you show the game's mood, the mechanics, the experience, and if well done, you can really like evoke feelings from the audience. For example, this is from Untitled Goose Game, and just a few seconds of this, it tells you a whole lot. It really just speaks for itself. But for example, what if instead it was like this? You know, in many cases, just words aren't necessary, but people just put them in anyway. I think sometimes they feel a little worried that people won't get it. But a lot of games really are good when they speak for themselves. And also, when you have a lot of text on a trailer, I think it can feel very salesy, and I think it can really turn people off if you kind of push a little bit too hard. And the exciting thing, I think, about trailers is trailers use the language of film. And you should really take advantage of all the unique strengths of film language. For example, basic tools of film, visuals, sound, which also includes music and voiceover, and editing. And another way to think about a game trailer is this is the most control you're ever going to have over how people see your game. And in fact, it might be the only way a lot of people see your game. So, you know, why just throw a whole bunch of capture over music and then call it a day? It's a really unique opportunity. Another thing that I need to say is a trailer is not a montage of random clips. The order that you put things in, it really, really matters. You know, if you have 2 shots, each of them will have their own individual meaning, but you cut them together, then you create a 3rd meaning. And that's really powerful. For example, editing can really highlight cause and effect, which is something that you really want to teach people in a trailer. So for example, this is from Quadrilateral Cowboy, which a lot of the game you spend typing on this computer and doing things like typing in these commands. So after you type this string for like deactivating lasers, somewhere in the level, lasers turn off. But in the actual shot of the moment, you might not see them because maybe they're above you or something like that. But in the trailer, you can easily just put the shot of the keyboard and then do a close-up of lasers turning off. You know, you don't have to be totally adhering to exactly what the game looks like. You can just do things like this to draw attention to how the game works. And in games, like, it's really hard to direct the player's eye unless you just kind of take control from them. But in a trailer, you have all that freedom, and people will accept that. And also, editing, it can be simple. You know, you don't have to be 2001 or Lawrence of Arabia with every single thing that you cut. You could just be simply saying, if this, and then this. And often that's enough to just spark people's imagination when they can see the potential. Another thing I want to say is don't think of a trailer as a video of bullet points or like a delivery system for bullet points, which yes, you can get the job done if you just say, like, weapons, and then show shots of weapons, and then boss battles, and then show boss battles, and guns, and then show all the different guns. But I think that format can get very predictable, and the audience, I think when they kind of get keyed into where you're going, then it gets a little less interesting. Another way to put this is don't waste time telling people the way your game is similar to other games. A lot of times when you use bullet points, it tends to turn out that way. Because when people watch a trailer for a new game, they're going in wanting something new. They're not thinking, like, oh my god, I'm going to watch this trailer, and I hope it's exactly like every other game I've played before this. You know, and they're looking for, like, what's the different thing about this one? So you should try to give that to them. I mean, imagine if a restaurant opened in your town, and they were like, we have chicken, and vegetables, and we use salt and pepper, and we have utensils. You'd be like, that's a little weird. You know, it'd only work if there are only people in town who serve chicken. But other than that, it'd be a little suspicious. Another way to think about it is just like familiar terms that you're used to can just really bog down a unique game. There are a lot of unique games which have a lot in common, but if you focus on those things, then it doesn't differentiate your game. And again, it can be a little bit weird that if you're focusing on these things that just are very familiar to the audience, they'd be like, is there nothing else? You know, it could be like if you have ever read a resume which people put like knowledge of Windows and Google Chrome on it. It's like, okay, it's a little bit weird that this is what you're focusing on. There must be nothing special here. Or another way to think about it is it could be like the like most generic dating profile you could possibly imagine. Like if you've ever been unfortunate enough to be on dating apps, like everyone says these things. And the last one specifically for men, because I've talked to some friends of mine, like everyone mentions Quentin Tarantino as their favorite director. So you might think like you're saying a lot, but actually, if you do your research, you find out it's not very original. But the best time to use kind of familiar game terms is maybe if your game has a unique combination of things. So for example, like Splunky combined platformer with roguelikes, and Dicey Dungeons combined like dice rolling and dungeon crawler. And Puzzle Quest had like Match 3 combined with a story RPG. So that was interesting and novel. But if your game isn't kind of this combination of familiar genres, you really need to focus on what is unique. Just one or two things. What is something that can only be said about your game? And it's really, I think it's better for people to remember one or two things about your game versus if you just kind of throw everything at them, like a dozen different ideas, and then they kind of don't retain any of that information. The other thing I think I see a lot is a lot of games seem kind of afraid to put their best foot forward when they have something unique and novel. I think that what it feels like showing something new, they could be like, okay, here's my new idea. And they're like, they're really afraid. They think it's risky. But I really think it's the opposite is true. I think it's riskier to say, like, oh, it's a roguelike RPG, and there's action and stuff. So I think you shouldn't be coy about what is unique. What you should do is just embrace what is unique about your game and just make it look as good as possible. And if you're unsure about whether or not your trailer is working, you should think about what would someone tell a friend about your game after seeing your trailer. People generally, when they're sharing something, like they watch a trailer, they don't go to their friend and say, oh, yeah, it has 50 hours of gameplay, it has 10 bosses, it has 12 levels, and it has 100 guns. They usually pick on something kind of like one little thing that they remember. So if you can figure out what that is going to be for your game, then that's great. So for example, like Ooblets, you grow cute animals on a farm. Or Firewatch, you're a lonely middle-aged man in the woods. Also, there's a turtle. Heaven's Vault, you're a space archaeologist who deciphers an ancient language. Or Tokyo Jungle, like you're in Tokyo, but it's a jungle, and you're a Pomeranian. Tokyo Jungle's awesome. Super Hot, the FPS where time only moves when you do. Just these little things that people just think about what you want people to say after watching the trailer, and focus on making that work. So when you have your hook, you really need to consider the needs of the audience. Think about what the audience is looking for when they're going to watch your trailer. What do they need to know about your game in order to get excited about it? Because there's a really unique burden on game trailers, which is that the audience needs to comprehend what they're seeing when they're watching it. What I mean is, when the audience hits play, usually they're immediately trying to understand, okay, how is this a game? What does the player do? They're looking for the gameplay, the unique things, or if it's not gameplay related, maybe they're looking for a story hook or some really pretty art or music that they really like. And just a lot of times, you can look at YouTube comments, they're like, where's the gameplay? I don't understand it. Maybe it could just be right there, but it's not illustrated in a way that they understand. Because game trailers, they really need to teach how the player fits into the game. Because people just want to know what they're going to do when they're playing the game. And they want to decide for themselves if it's going to be interesting or fun. So for example, like if we just showed just an environment in Firewatch, it's a little bit less clear than if you show the environment like holding the walkie-talkie. It's like, OK, I'm walking around and I have a walkie-talkie. It just gives you that much more information. And this idea, it's a little bit less important for announced trailers, I would say. I'd say kind of the closer you get to release, the more people will want to know. But if you kind of start out early, you just want to get kind of some buzz going, then it's OK to be a little bit vague. It's less important for them to understand like the how of the game versus like the what. But it's also just good to think of a game trailer like a tutorial. Just like when you're playing a game, the tutorial doesn't start with the most complicated ideas. You start simple, and then you kind of escalate, because, again, the trailer has to teach what's going on, so then people can get excited about the potential of when the mechanic gets turned on its head and all that. So for example, like from Super Mario Odyssey here, in one of their trailers, first they show Cappy, and then they show Mario just kind of throwing Cappy and just doing all this basic platforming stuff. And then they kind of take this moment here where they make a really, really big point of this one mechanic. They spend all this time where he like goes into the frog, is this alternate dimension, and then after this, it's like, oh man, this is a thing you can do. And then they start exploring all these different possibilities, and then hopefully at this point, you're like, oh my god, what could Mario throw his hat at? It could be this, it could be this, and then poof, So it's important for certain ideas to just get introduced early. Especially new and novel mechanics, you really need to build that knowledge. Because if they can't understand, then that means that they're just trying to understand the entire time, which means they're just missing everything you're trying to throw at them because they don't have the context to know what's going on. But so the way they did it, then it totally works because they understand, throw a Cappy at things, and then you can possess things. So now they're thinking, oh my god, I want to know what else I can do it with, and they're the possibility space is just expanding. Which this sounds very, very basic, but I've seen a lot of trailers where they put this important information in the middle or late in the trailer. So for example, if all the first shots in this trailer were of animals with mustaches, you might think to yourself, like, oh, it looks like Mario. Is this actually a Mario game? And then later on, they show Mario jumping into a thing. Then kind of all the shots that came before then would have been hard to remember at that point. It sounds very basic, but there are a lot of trailers I see where this is a problem. So just think about one or two pieces of information needed to kind of recontextualize all the rest of the footage that you want to show, which is really exciting. Again, because the audience, they just won't get excited or invested if they're just spending all their mental energy to think about what is going on. And then it will be much more exciting and engaging when they understand the basics. Just imagine if there was a trailer for Portal where all the first shots were walking and running and on jump platforms and going through doors, and then later on they showed the portal. It's like, it doesn't really make sense because people don't need all that information at the beginning. So they have the portal at the beginning, and then after that, they start thinking about, oh my god, I could shoot there, and I could do this sort of thing. Basically, you want the audience to see the game's potential and understand the possibilities. And then when they get really excited, like, oh my God, and then when I get the game, I could do this, and I could do this, I want to play it, you know? So let's talk a little bit about basic trailer structure. This is all about pacing. Pacing is hard, but so here we have this graph where the bottom is time, and the other is intensity. And intensity could mean several things, but I just generally mean like how exciting is the trailer at that moment. The thing is, you know, if the intensity is low the entire time, of course that's boring. But conversely, if it's high all the time, that also gets kind of boring, kind of like the Michael Bay effect, where when everything is exploding all the time, then you kind of get inured to it. And you'd think that maybe this is the best, where it just kind of increases and gets more and more exciting as you go along. But even that is almost kind of boring, because it becomes kind of predictable. It's like counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the curve that I like is this one. So basically, you have a cold open, which starts very exciting, and then you just to kind of hook the audience, and then after that, hopefully you have their attention. Then you start introducing some new ideas, and then you just kind of escalate, maybe turn them on their head, and then hopefully by the end, you have put the most exciting footage, and then maybe you have your title card, and if you want, sometimes you put a button, which is kind of like this one last little tease. So to give you some more specifics about each act, the cold open is to hook the audience, whether it's exciting editing or pretty visuals or action or humor. You just want to get them in, kind of like stand-up comedians. They always have to have like the first joke be the best, because if it isn't, then the audience doesn't want to laugh with them. And it's also why a lot of times on YouTube you see like movie trailers, they put a little teaser before the trailer, which is really annoying, but it works apparently, unfortunately. But you know, the better thing to do is if you just make the beginning exciting and have that be part of the trailer. But if you want to do the mini teaser thing too, it's proven to work. So then the introduction, you just kind of educate the audience, kind of where the chess pieces are. And then escalations, like, ooh, there's something going on here. You got to introduce some complexity into the story. And then you get the climax. It's really, really exciting. And then you have the title, and then there's a button for a little thing to delight the audience at the end. And then also, don't forget your call to action, your end slate. There's all these different things. Maybe you don't want to do them all. Maybe pick the ones that are most important, because I feel like when you have a ton of stuff, then people are less likely to want to do any of it. But end slate's very important. OK, so best and worst thing about game trailers is you get to create all your own shots. And I did a talk before about game capture. If you go to GameTrailerDebugTools.com, I have really in-depth thing about game capture. But just something to help you right now is questions you can use to help ask yourself to evaluate your shots for your trailers. Basically, these all build up on top of each other. So first, ask yourself, is it clear? It's no point in having a shot if you can't tell what's going on. Is it interesting? It could be clear, but it could be really boring. So then that's no good. Is it new? You always want to have a lot of variety in your trailer, because once you start repeating yourself, people will start thinking, oh, I guess there was nothing new to show. And then last is it pretty? If you can get all of them, fantastic. If you don't get all of them, then your game just better be like incredibly pretty or have amazing music, which if you have that, Yahtzee. How do you decide the order of shots? This is also really hard, but here's a kind of basic way to think about things. So this is something I do, is first inventory the game's objects, like player verbs, enemies, environments, obstacles, power-ups, all those things. Just think about what's in the game, that we could show. And then I like to rate my clips. So for example, this first shot, it's like a 1 star. It's kind of really basic part of Super Mario. Then this other one's 2 because there's some enemies there. And then this one's 3 because it's a boss battle. And then you can just look at the curve here. And then you can say, OK, we'll start with a 3-star shot. And then we'll go down to 1. And then we'll do 2. And then 3. You can think about it that way, just as a starting point. But even that can be kind of predictable, and then you could end up with like a lot of boring shots in the beginning. So actually what I like to do is kind of do things in waves. So for Spelunky 2, I would have kind of mini montages within the montage. So this is like a 1-star shot where they're just running, then there's the shopkeeper moment, and then there's this mini boss. And then after that, we go back down to something less interesting, which is like this crossbow thing, and then there's these traps, and this other shot with this kind of flying gray snake thingy. And then you could imagine, like on the graph, in waves, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's like music. All right, let's get into some tips and takeaways. Again, focus on what's unique. Find the hook, and really focus on the hook. If there's time, then I'd say it's fine to put in other things that people will find familiar, but not at the expense of showing what's unique. Again, let the game speak for itself. A narrator that says, like, this is a cool game, doesn't make the game seem cool. And it's like a car salesman, basically, in the trailer saying, check out this game, it's so cool. If you do want to have a narrator, something I like when people do is when they put the narrators kind of in universe, where it's like they're a character in the game, so it feels a little bit more like the game is talking for itself instead of like they hired a trailer person to be like, I'm the hype man, Again, is it clear? Is it interesting? Is it new? And is it pretty? Next, get good music. Music and art style are the most important part of the trailer, but music especially. Like I've seen a lot of trailers where I can see that they really didn't mind just mixing the music way down until it was completely inaudible, which means the music wasn't good enough, so why'd they use it? If you look at a lot of top 10 game trailer lists, a lot of them, like, they're not really reinventing the wheel, but they all have amazing music. So people say, oh, God, this is the best trailer ever, like Mad World and Gears of War. Another thing is listen to trailer music for inspiration. There's a lot of companies that work with like movie trailer companies that make music specifically for trailers. And I mean, it's not royalty free. It's always like individual license per use, but a lot of people upload it to YouTube. And if you just look up trailer music, you'll find a lot where they basically build in the pacing of a trailer into those tracks, where they like build in like the stop down moment, and then they resume, and it's like a second climax. So it's a good kind of cheat sheet for thinking about trailer structure. Put things in sync. People like when stuff is cut on the beat. It's just fun to watch. How you do it is up to you. Some people like to put the cuts on the beat. I like to put the actions on the beat. It kind of goes back and forth, but it's all personal preference. But it's fun. Next is read your trailer dialogue from beginning to end. So if you have a very narrative-focused game and you have a lot of dialogue, or even if it's text-based, just put all your dialogue on a notepad or something like that, and just read it through and see if from beginning to end you can kind of chart the through line of the story. Because a lot of times in trailers, you can tell they just took random scenes and they don't tell a story within the trailer. And it ends up just kind of going in one ear and out the other because nothing connects. So it's good to read it all through. Shots should end once their main idea is expressed. So just don't overstay your welcome. As soon as you get to the point, just cut. And everything will be nice and tight. Logos. If people won't recognize your logo, don't show it in the opening, okay? Just swallow your pride. There are very, very few companies, especially indies, who, when they see the logo, they're like, yes, oh my God. And even some that are well-known, people don't know their names, so you're just wasting time. In some cases, people might think that's the name of your game, and it's just, you're just giving more time for people to stop watching, because people get very impatient when they're watching stuff on YouTube, and especially if you're like fading in and out to black. So just put it on your end slate, it's fine. If you have a very good track record, then someday you can put your logo at the beginning and people will cheer for it. Turn off the HUD. Most games don't need the HUD turned on in the trailer. I basically say to people, it's kind of like when you're driving and a leaf shows up on your windshield. Or if you ever tried to watch a movie with subtitles on and not read the subtitles, this is basically what HUD is like in a game trailer. HUD is information that's needed for the player to play the game, not for people watching a trailer. But like just some exceptions-ish is like real-time strategy games, which a lot of the game is HUD, but in those situations, I usually tell people, if you can, maybe only show the parts of the HUD relevant to that particular shot, and then get rid of everything else, which it is extra work, but it makes things much clearer. And then just really consider the HUD as just anything else that's in the trailer. Is this necessary for this shot to communicate the idea that I want? Bless you. Don't get hung up on editing style. Worry about the trailer's goals. I see a lot of YouTube tutorials where people are like, oh, try cutting to black, and then try flashing to black and white and that sort of thing, or everything should be cut really fast at the end. But it's all kind of arbitrary unless it's for a particular feeling or something like that. So think more about what your trailer is trying to achieve and find the best way to do that. Show your trailer to someone who doesn't know anything about your game. Other people will notice things that you don't see, and even sometimes if you just have a person with you while you're watching the trailer, you'll immediately kind of see it through their eyes and be like, oh crap, there's this thing there that I didn't realize was there. I gotta fix that. And the other thing is that, especially if you're a game developer making your own trailer, it can be really easy to kind of forget what was special about your game. And at the same time, you can have things that you think are really special that other people are like, I don't really care. But like to you, it's like it took months to implement this one thing or something like that, so you want to put it in. So it's good to have another person. Again, don't show everything. You got to tease the audience. It's just enough to get them interested, but not enough for them to really understand fully, especially with announced trailers. Because a game that can be really summed up completely in a trailer, it won't seem like it has a lot to it. More information can be less interesting. Like I have my cats here all the time. Sometimes I'm just waving the toy in front of them, and they're like, yeah, whatever. And then I put it underneath a blanket. They're like, I need to get the toy. I think people are like that with trailers, too. And I think if you say too much, you can kind of go past the sale and turn people off. I have this friend, he gets really excited about movies, and he'll be like, oh, Derek, there's this movie called Inception, and they go into people's dreams. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. And then it just keeps going. He's like, and then they have this heist, and then the heist goes wrong, and then they have to go even deeper, and then there's snow. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, I'm already interested, just stop. Don't rob people that sense of discovery. And again, start the trailer with the most important, unique, or exciting idea, and you might blow people's minds the more they watch the trailer. Because you think about it, a lot of games are about exploring this one idea and turning it on its head and exploring it. You basically want to kind of give that feeling for the trailer. And also just think about trailers as early as possible. It could even be before you design a game or while you're doing it, because it's really, really important to have a good trailer. And if you find out your game is really hard to make a trailer for, then maybe that could be an opportunity to think about its visuals or its design in a way that would make it better for that. And it's really important, too, because you're gonna need to make animated GIFs, and then people are gonna make YouTube videos and stream on Twitch. So you want the visual communication to be really good. And that's it. Thank you for coming. This is my website. I also have a website, Game Trailer Specs, where all those little nitty-gritty console things like the bit rate, I just put them on one site, and ESRB sort of regulation stuff. And then again, I have a whole bunch of debug tools that I listed that are good to implement to your games specifically for trailers. And do we have time for questions? Okay, I think we do not. But I'll stick around if you have questions. Everyone, thank you for coming.